castles, kilts, and hairy Highland coos. Today, we're talking about how to plan the perfect trip to Scotland. But first, here's a quick preview of the episode.
The Highlands are unlike anywhere else on Earth. They have jaw-dropping mountains, glens, lochs. You can travel around the whole of Highlands and just see unbelievable things that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And if you're in the city itself, it's not uncommon to see dolphins in the River Ness, which run through the middle of the city, so keep an eye out for those.
So I have to ask you, in your opinion, is the Loch Ness Monster real?
Well, yeah, obviously the Loch Ness Monster is real. There's so much proof that Nessie is swimming around, we just haven't been able to find her yet.
Welcome to the Travel Lemming podcast, where we talk all things travel with our team of expert locals and travelers. I'm your host, Laura McFarland. I'm a senior travel writer here at Travel Lemming with experience visiting and living in over 40 countries. My guest today is Louise. She's a freelance travel writer with Travel Lemming and is our resident Scotland local. She writes a ton of articles for us about places to visit in Scotland and how to plan the perfect Scotland trip. She's also lived in Spain and traveled extensively around Europe. Louise, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're a Scotland expert?
Hi Laura, thanks for having me. I'm our local Scotland expert because I was born and raised in Scotland. I was born in Glasgow and lived there until I was a student when I moved to Edinburgh, in Scotland's capital city. And I lived there for several years and now I'm back in Glasgow. And I love to write travel guides to Glasgow, Edinburgh and the whole of Scotland. I also lived in Spain for a couple of years and I really knew the difference that having local expertise could make to having a great trip.
That's amazing. I think that's one of the big things that we try to push here at Travel Lemming is just the difference that local expertise really does make for your trip. I mean, a little bit about my Scottish background. I definitely don't have the same background as Louise, but I'm excited to be here talking about it today. I do have some Scottish heritage. My last name is McFarland, which we trace to the old-time Clan McFarland in the Scottish Highlands. My parents actually had their honeymoon in Scotland and they had a pipe band play at their wedding. So it's been a big part of my life growing up is this emphasis on Scottish heritage. I've been lucky enough to travel to Scotland twice now, once in 2018 for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where I traveled around Edinburgh, Glasgow, and hiked in Loch Ness National Park. And then I also went again in 2024 to Edinburgh and the Isle of Skye. All right, Louise, let's jump right in with the first question of why should someone go visit Scotland?
Scotland has so much to offer for people who want to visit, no matter what you're interested in. It's packed with history. There are hundreds of castles around the country. There are Neolithic ruins in Orkney and Shetland. There are Viking remains in parts of the west coast. There's a world-renowned landscape. The Highlands are unlike anywhere else on Earth. They have jaw-dropping mountains, glens, lochs. You can travel around the whole of Highlands and just see unbelievable things that you wouldn't see anywhere else. It also has, like you say, the largest performance art festival in the world, the Edinburgh Fringe, which runs every August for the entire month of August. It's a huge draw to the country and it's so entertaining. And best of all, the people are really friendly, they're really welcoming. You'll often hear visitors say how well received they were by the local people.
Did you say that there are Viking remains in a part of the West Coast?
Yeah, in Largs, there's a Viking museum called Vikingar. It's interactive and it's really great for kids to go and visit and see some of the places where the Vikings landed and raided.
Wow, that's crazy. I'm excited to get to know more of your little hidden gems because I never knew that. So what type of travelers should visit Scotland? Is it a great place for someone who's outdoorsy or adventurous? Or is it better for budget travelers? Or maybe history lovers would really like it?
Well, it's great for all types of travelers depending on where you go in Scotland. There are different regions and there are different attractions to them. Outdoorsy and adventure travellers will love the Highlands. There are so many hill walking paths, there's trails, there's ski slopes in the Cairngorms around Aviemore, and you can go Munro bagging. Munros are mountains in Scotland which are over 3,000 feet. There's almost 300 of them, so you can do a lot of hill walking if you want to. People will try and bag all of the Munros and climb all of them, but that will take a bit more than a week anyway.
Thanks for putting that in feet, by the way, and not meters for us Americans that are listening.
I think we use a mixture of both feet and meters. It can be really confusing, but mountains are often in feet and not meters. Our height, we measure in feet, but then we mention other things, like distances can be in kilometres or miles. It's a bit of a mixed bag. It's very confusing at times. Our speed limit is
a land of confusing.
We haven't got metric or imperial. We use both, which is just the worst of both worlds, but we get by somehow.
Okay, so Munros are mountains that are over 3,000 feet.
There are 282 of them.
Wow. Has anyone ever climbed all 282?
There was actually a news story the other day of a child who'd climbed them twice. So she's just done them. They're not too hard to climb. You can, if you are safe about it, if you go in good weather, you can climb pretty much all the Munros without a lot of experience. The biggest one is Ben Nevis. That's the highest mountain in the UK. And you have to be careful about it. You have to make sure you don't go in really bad weather, have your equipment, make sure you go with someone, and just take precautions. But they aren't too arduous. It's not like Mount Everest or anything, so they can be a nice day out.
Okay, well, that sounds fantastic, and we'll cover a lot more about hiking and outdoorsy stuff later on in the podcast. But I wanted to touch back on, you said history lovers might also find something in Scotland.
Yeah, there's lots to find in Scotland. There are literally thousands of castles all around the country in different states of preservation. There are the ones which are best preserved, like Edinburgh Castle, one of the most famous ones. It has the crown jewels in it. It has the royal palace. It's so much history. And it's in a great location right in the middle of Edinburgh. If you climb up to the top of Edinburgh Castle, you can see all around the city. It's absolutely stunning. But there are also ones which are a bit out of the cities. There's Dunotter, which is just outside of Stonehaven in Aberdeenshire. It's a stunning castle. You can see it in postcards everywhere. It's a really famous image of a castle.
Is it mostly intact, the castle, or is it more the ruins of the
It's
castle?
mostly intact. Nobody lives in it, but it is mostly an intact castle. It's really well preserved. Some of these castles are hundreds of years old, but they were built so well that they've lasted throughout all the horrible weather and sieges and everything, and they've managed to keep standing. Stirling's another one that's been renovated and restored really, really well. It's a great location. It's got great views. You can see the Wallace Monument from Stirling Castle as well, which is a huge towering monument to William Wallace, the famous hero from Braveheart. And Stirling.
Okay, I've never seen Braveheart, so who is William Wallace? Is this a fictional character only, or is it based on a true story?
William Wallace was a real man. He rebelled against the English, and he was killed for it. So he won some famous battles, and he lost some other more famous battles, and then he was decapitated and split into 4, and his body parts were sent around the UK. It was quite grim, but he was a really famous Scottish hero, even though he lost. So we commemorate him.
And so you can see that statue is near Stirling Castle?
It's a huge building. It's like a tower, and it's just outside Stirling. It's great. You can climb up to the top and see all around. You can see the Battle of Stirling Bridge, which that's one of his famous victories over the English was at Stirling, a very narrow bridge, and you can still see where the battles took place. Another really beautiful castle, which people might be familiar with the images, is Eilean, which is near the Kyle of Loch. It's just a stunning castle. It's on an island. The background's amazing. It's near lochs and it's surrounded by mountain ranges, and it's absolutely stunning. It's well worth a visit if you're in the Highlands, especially if you're doing a tour. You can get to it quite easily. There's also some hidden gems castles, because there are so many castles. Some of them are quite unique. Kilburn is a very unique castle. It's near Largs, and the owner of Kilburn Castle has had it graffiti painted on the outside. So it's pink and purple with shapes and spray paint everywhere, and it hosts a festival every year as well, a big party, and it's quite unique in terms of castles.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
so just before we fully dive into more of our Scotland advice, Louise, I want to ask you, there are certain words that you're using that I think it might be helpful to translate for our maybe American audience or non-Scottish audience who might be listening. So you already talked about Munro, and that's the Scottish word meaning like hill or mountain. I know loch you've mentioned a few times, and I believe that means lake, right?
Yeah, it does. It's just the Scottish word for lake. It's loch, but it's said with a rolling tongue at the back of your throat, which is not a very common sound in English, so people will often struggle to say loch, but we know what you mean if you say loch. There's also glen, which is like a valley. You'll see the hills and the dens. Ben is also the Scottish word for mountain, so Ben Nevis just means Nevis Mountain.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit later on, I'll talk about Ceilidh dancing, and Ceilidh is just a form of Scottish dancing. It's traditional Highland dancing.
Okay, I just figured that would be helpful to get right off the bat, just so that we're all on the same page here. So jumping in now, if someone's planning a trip to Scotland, what would you say as a local are the essential places to visit and things to do? I want to start first with a quick breakdown of the regions, because Scotland is not all the same. There are different regions of Scotland. So can you break down a little bit the different areas that someone might encounter when they're planning a trip?
Yep, so Scotland has a few different regions which are very different in terms of the character and the number of people who are there and the things to do. There are the Highlands, which are to the north and west, which are mostly mountainous. There are very few people there. It's quite sparse. And the scenery there is absolutely beautiful. It's full of lochs, it's full of glens, mountains. It's a really popular place to visit, especially on tours, places like Loch Ness or Loch Long. And you'll find a lot of hill walking, outdoor attractions, things like that. There's also the Central Belt, which is across the middle of Scotland, which is the most populous area. It's very urban. It has the cities of Edinburgh, Glasgow and Stirling in it, and around half of Scotland's population live in the Central Belt. So there are really good transport links, there's lots of accommodation options, you can travel around a few places in the course of a day, and it's quite a popular place to travel as well if you go to Edinburgh and Glasgow and Stirling. There are ranges of attractions to see, there's lots of cuisines, there's lots of different things to do in the Central Belt.
So just to give us an example of the size of the Central Belt, how long does it take to travel between the two biggest cities, Glasgow and Edinburgh?
So if you get the train between Glasgow and Edinburgh, it takes around 53 to 55 minutes. So it's very quick. Those are the express trains.
Quite close.
Yeah, and that's coast to coast. So that's the extent of the Central Belt. Scotland is very thin, especially in the Central Belt. It's very narrow.
Wow, an hour coast
An
to
hour
coast.
coast to coast. To get to Stirling, it's
Okay.
maybe about 45 minutes as well between Glasgow and Stirling. They're all very close together. You can take the bus as well, which is a bit longer, or drive between them. But your best way to get between them is the train. It's very fast.
So it seems possible then that someone could plan a trip to multiple different regions of Scotland, and maybe that they should try to visit multiple different regions to see the full variety of landscape that Scotland has to offer.
Yeah, definitely. You have to try and explore a bit of Scotland if you want to see what it's really like. It's good to have a base in certain areas and then you can travel around. For example, if you wanted to see the Central Belt, you could stay in Edinburgh and get the train between places. If you wanted to see the Highlands, you could travel to Inverness and take some tours from there or drive around. And it's a good way to explore lots of parts of the country without having to be on the move and find new accommodation all the time. But it's really good to travel around different parts of the country and see all the variety of areas there are.
So we've talked about the Central Belt and the Highlands. Are there any other regions we should be aware of?
Yeah, there are the islands, which are mostly to the west coast. There are a few to the north as well, the Shetland Islands. These are very different areas. They're very rural. They have some absolutely incredible scenery. The most famous one is probably Skye, which is connected to the mainland via a bridge. So you can actually drive onto Skye, you can take the bus to Skye, you can go and explore and see the gardens. There's also Shetland to the north, which is quite far away. They have a very unique accent as well because they were colonised by Vikings. So they have a lot of words which are very similar to Norwegian, and they have a very unique culture. Shetland is a lovely place to travel. It's quite remote, so you can either take a ferry or you can fly there. There are a few options to fly to the islands on the west coast as well, or otherwise it's ferry. Skye is the only island which is connected to the mainland by a bridge.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was lucky enough to visit the Isle of Skye on my most recent trip to Scotland, and I can attest it is a lovely place. But Louise, I know that you have a few other islands that you say are just as beautiful as Skye and are less touristy and a lot easier to travel around, which we will get to later in this episode. But to round out our geography lesson, are there any other regions we should be aware of?
Yeah, there are the Scottish borders, which are often overlooked by tourists, unfairly so. There are some really beautiful towns to visit in the borders. These are to the south, with the border with England. There's the town of Dumfries to the south, which is a really beautiful city. They have some lovely cathedrals there with a lot of history. They have a Peter Pan house as well, because Peter Pan was created in Dumfries. There's Peebles, which is a beautiful city. There's also a few notable places in the borders, including Gretna Green. It was a wedding town because historically the age to get married in England and Scotland was different. If you were 16 or 17 and wanted to get married in England, you had to have parental consent, and you didn't in Scotland. So young lovebirds would travel to Gretna Green on the border and get married there. And they would often get married by blacksmiths because they got ordained and were able to perform weddings. And you can still get married by blacksmiths in Gretna Green to this day.
Wow. So is Gretna Green the Scottish version of Vegas weddings? Is it, or is it?
It's a little bit more traditional in Vegas, but it is a traditional wedding destination. That's what it's best known for, is being a wedding town. So it's quite unique in that sense.
That sounds beautiful.
There's also the town of Wigtown, which is Scotland's national book town. It's a really small town, but it has dozens of bookshops in it, and every year it hosts a book festival. So if you love books, you should travel to Wigtown. It's quite unique.
That sounds amazing. I will definitely be adding that to my bucket list. Well, thank you, Louise, for breaking that down for us. Now that we've talked about the variety in the landscapes in Scotland and the cultures, what are the most essential places to go for first-time visitors to Scotland?
I always recommend that first-time visitors go to Edinburgh. There's just so much to do there. You could spend weeks in Edinburgh not running out of things to do. I spent years in Edinburgh and never found out things to do. There's the obvious attractions of Edinburgh Castle. There's Edinburgh Dungeons, if you like a bit of a ghost tour, a bit of creepy history. There's the Royal Mile along the centre of Edinburgh, right in the old town. There are so many attractions on the Royal Mile. There's St Giles Cathedral, which is a really historic cathedral in the heart of the city. There's Camera Obscura, which is the House of Illusions, which is great for kids. There's Holyrood, which is the Scottish Parliament. That's a modern building, and it's quite controversially used. A bit Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. But it's got great background. It's got Arthur's Seat behind it, which is a ancient volcano in Edinburgh. And it's traditional that you climb.
A volcano?
But it doesn't erupt. It's extinct, so you're at no risk in Edinburgh. But it's traditional to climb up to Arthur's Seat and see the views over the top.
And Edinburgh as a whole, would you define it as a city with quite ancient architecture, or is it more modern, or does it have a little bit of everything?
It's very historic in the centre of Edinburgh, particularly the Old Town. The Royal Mile is ancient. There are so many closes and different places to travel down, which are just packed with history that are hundreds of years old. The New Town is also ironically old. That's a couple of hundred years old, but it's relative to the Old Town. There's also the historic port town of Leith, which is now part of Edinburgh. It was made famous in the movie Trainspotting, but it's very trendy, it's very cool. Lots of people want to travel there. There's so many great restaurants and bars, and it's really the place that young people from Edinburgh want to go and spend a lot of time in.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And does Edinburgh have an international airport? How easy is it for people to travel and start their trip in Scotland from Edinburgh?
Edinburgh has an international airport, which is quite busy. It has a lot of connections. And you can also fly into London and either fly from London or take the train up to Edinburgh, which is quite a popular option. It's a really scenic train journey and it's quite frequent through the day. So you can either fly directly into Edinburgh, you can fly to Glasgow and it's only, like I say, a 50-minute train journey away. Or you can fly to London and get the train or fly up from there.
I actually did. The first time I went to Scotland was I took the train from London to Edinburgh, and I can attest it is beautiful, quite scenic, just rolling green hills with like sheep and cows, and it was very, very beautiful. Okay, so we talked about Edinburgh. What are some other essential places to go for first timers?
So I really don't think you've seen Scotland if you haven't seen the Highlands. They're just unbelievably beautiful. They're unparalleled. A good place to base yourself to see the Highlands is Inverness. You can stay there and see the city itself. Inverness is beautiful. There's so much to do in the city or just outside of it. But from there, you can also take tours or you can drive to parts of the Highlands. You can see the famous Loch Ness and look for Nessie and travel to the Clava Cairns and different places around about and see some of the real natural beauty around about there.
So you mentioned basing yourself out of Inverness and you can take a tour of Loch Ness. So I have to ask you, in your opinion, is the Loch Ness Monster real?
Well, yeah, obviously the Loch Ness Monster is real. There's so much proof that Nessie is swimming around. We just haven't been able to find her yet.
But there's so much proof.
Yes, so many photos. Historic photos.
So it seems like a trip to the Highlands is definitely worth it for first-time visitors to Scotland. Anywhere else?
Another place which is great to visit if you're new to Scotland is Arran, the Isle of Arran. Many people will start their first trip to Scotland, they'll go to Skye, which is, like you say, it's beautiful. It's like got such incredible hill walking routes. It's got so much to do. But it is also very crowded in summer months. So if you don't want to be caught up in some of that, the accommodation prices could be very high as well. Arran is a great alternative. It's known as Scotland in miniature because it has so much geographical diversity. There's so much to do. And you can travel around the coastal way of Arran. You can cycle, you can walk, you can climb Goatfell Mountain, you can see lots of things in Arran. So I would always recommend maybe branching out a bit and seeing Arran or another island which has got so much to offer.
That's great advice. And I do want to clarify, when you say that Isle of Skye can be busy or quite touristy in the summer, what kind of numbers are we talking about here? Because I know Scotland in general doesn't feel ever super overcrowded. I mean, it seems like the cities are on the smaller side in terms of major international cities, right? Like, do you know what the population of Edinburgh is around?
Edinburgh is around 400,000 people. So that's very small for a city. It gets really crowded in August when the Fringe, because there's so many tourists that come and stay, and the accommodation prices in August can shoot up. And it's the same in Skye. It's quite small. There's not a lot of people there throughout the year. Not many locals, and the island is big, but there's not that many accommodation options, and the roads are very narrow and quite windy. So if you're there in busy summer months, it can become quite tricky to drive around and find places to stay. You have to book well in advance if you're set on going to Skye. So if you want something a bit more laid back, a bit more space, and a bit fewer people, I would go to Arran.
It seems like that would maybe be a strain on local resources as well. If everyone is trying to go to this one place in peak season, it might be nice to spread the wealth a little bit, so to say.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It can be hard for local people to afford to stay in places like Skye because tourist prices have driven everything up and made it more expensive. So it can be more considerate sometimes to go somewhere a bit quieter and share some of that tourist money and not put too much strain on the local resources.
That's a great point. I'll definitely add Arran to my next Scotland itinerary. What are the most essential experiences you would say for someone who's visiting Scotland?
Well, I think it's great to go on a boat tour to try and find Nessie in Loch Ness. You can go and feel the places that she's been spotted before. A boat tour on a loch is generally great. There's one of the best ways to see the scenery, to actually get on a boat trip to see the mountains around about you. Even if it's cold and rainy, it'll still be a great view. So I think it's definitely something that's worth doing. For people who love whiskey as well, you can do a whiskey distillery tour. You can do whiskey tastings, you can try some of the local whiskies, and that's a great way to experience some local culture. Just make sure there's always a designated driver, because Scotland's drink driving limit is 0, so you can't have a single drink before you drive. It's very strict. One other thing that you can try and do is a Munro bagging. Like I said, you can try and fit in as many climbs of Munro hills as possible during your trip. You might not be able to get all of them. It's 282 mountains and hills to climb, but you probably won't find a bad one. There are so many great Munros to climb. They'll be all around the Highlands, so you can take your pick, whatever one you're closest to.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, I haven't ever tried to hunt for Nessie, who is real and exists, but I have done a whiskey tasting and a whiskey distillery. And I have done some hiking of the different Munros, and I can attest that those are two of my favorite things that I did in Scotland. Well, the whiskey in Scotland is fantastic. So if you're into trying different spirits, definitely make sure that you check out a distillery. Louise, what are some of your personal favorite or hidden gem things that locals like to do in Scotland that maybe the average tourist wouldn't know about?
So I love visiting the little town of Curtis. It's spelled Culross. It's one of those Scottish spellings, which is completely different from the way you say it. It's an old village from the 16th to 17th century. It's appeared in quite a lot of TV shows and films, including Outlander, so some people might recognise it if they've watched Outlander. It's beautifully preserved. There's some really stunning streets, old cobblestones, and there's a Curtis Palace in the centre, which is very small. It's got very small rooms, so it's quite cute for a palace. It's also got a ruined abbey, so there's lots to do around about there.
Oh, wow. And where is Curtis located?
So Curtis is in Fife, so that's on the east coast. It's not far from Edinburgh. You can travel there by bus quite easily.
Oh, nice. So it'd be a good day trip from Edinburgh for someone traveling?
Yeah, definitely. It would be a great place to spend an afternoon and have some tea and cake and enjoy the local scene.
That sounds fantastic. Anywhere else?
I really love the city of Dundee, and a lot of people wouldn't recommend it to tourists because it doesn't have as much obvious attraction to people, but it's a really great place to visit. There's a lot that's happened in the past 10, 15 years to rejuvenate this cultural side of Dundee. There's the V&A Museum along the beachfront, which is a stunning architectural building. It's a fashion museum, and they have lots of travelling exhibitions on, and it's really beautiful to see. They've rejuvenated the beachfront in Dundee as well, which maybe you don't want to go swimming in Dundee. It's not going to be the warmest, but it is a really beautiful place to hang out. There's a ship there as well. You can explore some of Dundee's ship past. I just think it's really overlooked. It's really affordable. It's really friendly. There's great nightlife. You can also climb to Dundee Law, which is a viewpoint over the city, and see all of it spread out before you. And it is really gorgeous, and it's very affordable. It's much cheaper than staying in Edinburgh or Glasgow.
Oh, wow. And where is that? How far away from one of the major cities?
So it's on the east coast, so it's only a couple of hours from Edinburgh. You can travel there by bus or by train really easily. There's lots of good transport links to Dundee.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for those recommendations. So for someone who's trying to plan a trip to Scotland, how long should you plan for? Like, what's your ideal? Is 1 week enough? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Well, it depends on how much you want to see, especially if you travel to some of the islands or to the Highlands. You need more time to really get around. Transport takes a bit longer. If you're travelling to Shetland, you have to get a long ferry there or fly, so it's worth going for longer. If you're only going to Edinburgh or Glasgow, say, you can see a lot in a long weekend. You can get a real good feel for the cities. You can see a lot of the main attractions. But if you're travelling between places, if you're seeing a few cities, if you're travelling to the countryside, I would say you need at least a week, preferably 2, just to really see the country and not feel rushed between places. Just get to enjoy and explore and maybe take the less beaten track and find a few new places.
Okay, great. So let's say someone's planning a trip for somewhere between 1 to 2 weeks. What's your ideal Scotland itinerary for, say, a 7 to 10 day trip?
I would recommend flying into Edinburgh. It has the international airport, so it's really easily accessible. You can see a lot. If you stay there for 2 days, you can see a lot in the first 2 days. You can visit Edinburgh Castle, the dungeons, go down the Royal Mile and climb Arthur's Seat. You can get a real feel for the city and enjoy some of the cultural attractions that there are there. On day 3, I would either take the train or bus to Inverness. These are really frequent, they're not too expensive, and you can see a lot in Inverness. You can see Inverness Castle. You can travel to Culloden Battlefield, which is a really significant battlefield in a Jacobite uprising in the 17th century, to Clava Cairns, which were Neolithic ruins, and Leakey's Bookshop, which is the biggest second-hand bookshop in Scotland. And you can see all of that in a day. From there, you can travel to Loch Ness on a tour or by driving. And if you're in the city itself, it's not uncommon to see dolphins in the River Ness, which run through the middle of the city. So keep an eye out for those if the weather's good.
In the river?
Yeah, they swim along the river from the North Sea, so they can see dolphins in there. It's beautiful.
That sounds incredible. I don't know anywhere in the world that you can see dolphins in a river in the middle of a city.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Inverness is a gorgeous city and it's really quite small, so you can see a lot of things in nature which you wouldn't find in a lot of other cities. The dolphins, for me, is my favourite part. You can also sometimes see dolphins in Aberdeen. So next you should take a visit to the Highlands. You can either drive or take a tour. I wouldn't recommend getting public transport. It can be very patchy, it won't go everywhere you want it to go, and it can take a long time. So definitely drive, take a tour. You can see Ben Nevis, the biggest mountain in the UK. You can see some Munros. You can go to the town of Aviemore. In winter you can go skiing. There's lots of outdoor hikes to do. It's a really beautiful place to go to be in nature. There's also a adventure park for kids there. There's water coasters, there's forest adventures. It's called Landmark Forest. It's a really popular place to go with families. So you can spend a couple of days in the Highlands. There's so much to see. You can travel around Arran, different places, and really get a feel for the Highlands.
Are the Highlands quite big, or is it possible to see, can you see all of the Highlands in 2 days, or are you just kind of picking one route and seeing things along that route?
The Highlands are really massive, so it'd be really difficult to see it all in even a couple of weeks. You can spend so much time in the Highlands and still find new things. Part of it is because it's so rural and so mountainous, so you won't be able to travel very easily between it. 2 days is enough to get a feel for the place and see some of the best scenes, the best scenery and the best nature. But you won't be able to see all of the Highlands in a week even, so you want to try and pick your favourite parts of the Highlands. You can't really go wrong. There's not much bad to see in the Highlands. The scenery everywhere is beautiful, but it is a very big part of Scotland. It's the majority of Scotland is the Highlands.
Wow. Okay, good to know. And so then where do you go after the Highlands?
So after the Highlands, you would want to travel to Arran. You can get the ferry from Ardrossan and you can go and see a lot of the island in 2 days there. You can visit Broddick Castle, Goatfell Mountain Peak. You can go to a distillery there if you want to try whiskey, the Isle of Arran distillery. And you can also see the Macrae Moor stone circles, which are Neolithic remains, which are really quite stunning stone circles, really well preserved in Arran. So you can spend 2 days there and see a lot of Arran.
Wow. And can you take the car that you rented to drive around the Highlands, can you take that on the ferry to Arran, or are you leaving your car and walking around Arran? I mean, how big is it?
I would recommend taking your car to Arran because it's quite big. There are coastal paths that you could walk around and you can cycle around, but you can't do it in a day. It'll take you a long time to. You could cycle around it in a day, but you couldn't walk around it in a day. So I would recommend taking the car. You can take cars in the ferry as long as your rental contract allows that. There are car ferries, so if possible, I would take the car to make it easier to get around and see all the sights.
Okay, wonderful. And then you spend a few days in Arran, and where do you go next?
To finish off your trip, I would go to Glasgow. And I'm not just saying that because I am Glaswegian. It is a great place to be. It's a good cultural centre. It's very different from Edinburgh. It's not just another city, which is quite similar. It's got a lot of modern culture. It's got a lot going on. It's much bigger than Edinburgh. It's twice the size of Edinburgh. You can go and see some of the oldest parts of Glasgow, Glasgow Cathedral, Glasgow Necropolis, which is the cemetery overlooking the cathedral on top of a hill. It's really stunning. It's got great views. It's really historical. From there you could see the Barras Market, which is a large flea market, which has got everything you could possibly want to find. There's so much going on there. You can find sweets, you can find old videotapes, you can find handmade crafts, art, clothes, everything. It's just great to spend some time in there and find some hidden treasures and little gems. You could also travel to the West End with one of your days and see some of the attractions around there. You've got Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum, which has got a lot of artwork. It's got a lot of zoological exhibitions, and it's in a really beautiful building as well. It's a great place to even just to go and see and sit inside. They have organ performances every day, and those are beautiful just to sit and listen to those. From there you could also see the University of Glasgow, which is this gorgeous campus building. People compare it to Hogwarts quite a lot. They think it's really, really grand.
Oh, wow.
It's got cloisters and I went there. It's a really beautiful place to study. It's just got great views over the West End as well. You can see more of the West End, including the Botanic Gardens. They have glass houses in them, which are full of statues and exotic plants. They're great if it's cold. You want to go and get warm somewhere, you can go to the Botanic Gardens and heat up. And if it's on a Friday, you can sit outside and have a picnic or just relax. In summer, they have performances of Shakespeare, they have outdoor cinema, they have lots going on in the West End. So I would spend one of your days in the West End and get to explore some of that as well.
So Glasgow seems like quite a lively city. It seems like there's so much to do.
Yeah, there's a lot to do in Glasgow. There's lots of arts. There are so many museums, modern art centres. There's lots of music venues as well. Glasgow's known for its music heritage, so there are some great places to see gigs.
Oh, wow.
The Barrowlands are really famous for being a great venue for artists. King Tut's is a really small one, which has had a lot of huge names come through it. Oasis were signed there, so it's a really, really small venue, but some really big artists have played there, so it's good to see somebody before they make it big. If you go to King Tut's, they've got a great record on that.
That's incredible. And maybe this is just me as an American not knowing much about Scotland, but would you say that Edinburgh retains more of the kind of traditional, old-timey Scottish heritage, whereas Glasgow is maybe a bit more modern and almost futuristic, or is that completely wrong to say?
I would think that's true. Glasgow's got a lot more modern art places. It's got a lot more modern changes. The city centre itself is a lot more modern than Edinburgh's one. Edinburgh is much older. Glasgow has some really historic buildings, but they are more in the East End. They're a bit out of the city. The cathedral is really, really old. But it's very vibrant. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of new culture. Edinburgh has too, but the architecture is a lot older, and a lot of the traditions are a lot older. They have some really historic things like the Edinburgh tattoo and the one in Gun. They have these traditions, and Glasgow has a lot more new things going on. It's a quite exciting time to be in Glasgow.
Can you real quickly clarify what the Edinburgh tattoo is for people who might not know?
The Edinburgh tattoo is a festival in August. It's held at Edinburgh Castle, and it is pipers, and it's a big band there, and it's a great place to go and to celebrate traditional Scottish culture.
And that's where you could see traditional things like bagpipes and the drums and maybe kilts and dances and that kind of
Yeah,
heritage.
exactly. Lots of bagpipes, and they play them really well. It's a really popular attraction. The tickets sell out really fast, so you want to make sure, if you want to go to the tattoo, to book far in advance.
Fantastic. So that rounds out our itinerary for a perfect 7 to 10 day trip in Scotland. And now, for those of us who might now be planning our accommodation now that we're all going to Scotland together, so where would be the best place to stay while you're in Scotland? If maybe you want to base yourself out of one city and do a few day trip, what are the major areas where you'll be able to find accommodation?
I would say Glasgow is a great place to base yourself. There's lots of transport links. There are 2 major train stations in Glasgow. There's Glasgow Central, which connects with the south, and there's Glasgow Queen Street, which connects to the east and to the north. There are lots of buses as well. There's a bus terminus. You can travel around quite easily from Glasgow, and there's lots of places to stay there. You can stay in the city centre and be really close to these 2 train stations and be in the heart of Glasgow and be around a lot of culture, a lot of things to do, a lot of shopping streets as well, and good nightlife. So that's a great place to stay if you want to see some of Glasgow and see some of Scotland as well.
And you wrote an article about the best places in Glasgow to stay, right? Kind of breaking down the different areas and different hotels that are your personal favourite picks.
Yeah, I did. Some of my favourite places to stay in Glasgow are in the city centre. There's a really iconic hotel at Glasgow Central Station called Vocal Grand Central, which is actually built into the train station. It's a really historic building. And they've had a lot of major deaths over the years. JFK visited, and so did Frank Sinatra, so it's got very good heritage there. And you can stay in the West End as well, and there are some really beautiful places to stay in the West End, which are very grand and not too expensive as well.
Amazing. So yeah, anyone looking to find a good place in Glasgow, make sure to check out Louise's article on travellemming.com. Now, outside of Glasgow, any other cities that you recommend?
Edinburgh is also another great place to base yourself because of the transport links. You can obviously spend a lot of time in Edinburgh just itself, but then you can take day trips as well. You can go to Stirling or Falkirk or Dundee. It's a really great place to travel around there. And there are some great areas to stay as well. You can stay in the old town or the new town. Both are very essential. Both have a lot of history and a lot of things to do. You could stay in the Scotsman Hotel in Edinburgh. It's right in the heart of Edinburgh. It's right next to Waverley train station, the main train station in Edinburgh. It's a former newspaper building, so it's very grand. It's from the early 20th century, 1905, I think. And it's a really beautiful place to stay.
Amazing. And then what if someone wants to visit the Highlands and kind of base themselves out of the Highlands? I know you talked about Inverness being a good starting point there, right?
Yeah, Inverness is a great place to start. There's a lot of tours that start from Inverness, so if you're already there, it's really easy to connect tours to the Highlands, or you can drive from there. You can get the train from Edinburgh or Glasgow to Inverness itself and then travel onwards. You can travel onwards to get the ferry up to the Shetlands. The Kingswell Hotel in Inverness is really beautiful. I stayed there before and it was absolutely gorgeous. They've got a spa, they've got a pool. And they've got little cottages out the back, which is where we stayed, and felt very fancy. It was snowing when we were there, so it was very picturesque.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. So I would really
Wow.
recommend that one.
And in terms of these hotels, I guess that brings us to our next point, which is budget. I mean, what should you expect to spend on accommodation in Scotland? Does it vary by city? And what are some of the other things that you should expect to budget for while you're visiting?
Yeah, it does vary by city quite a lot, especially the time of year. If you're staying in Edinburgh in August, it's extremely expensive. So it depends on where you're travelling to. You can get good deals if you book far in advance, or if you try to find places that are a little bit out of the city centre. Inverness is much more affordable than Edinburgh. Glasgow is the same, but it depends on major events. If there's a lot going on culturally in Glasgow, if there are major events on it, the Hydro Stadium, for example, which hosts concerts and shows, then prices will rise because more people will be staying. But you can get good deals on hotels as long as you plan in advance, and preferably avoid August unless you're going for the Fringe, in which case that's the only time it's on. You have to be there then. Other ways you can save money is to get a rail card for the trains when you travel. You can get a 16 to 25 rail card if you're between those ages, or if you're 26 to 30, you can get one. You can get a senior rail card if you're over 60, or a two together rail card, which is people for any age. You just have to travel with two people at all times. And all of those will give you a third off of your train fare as long as you buy the ticket, which is £35 for each one of them. They're really good value for money if you're travelling a few times. They last over the course of a year. So if you have a few long distance trains,
Wow.
you can make your money back through doing that. I would recommend looking into a rail card if you're travelling a lot by train. Buses are actually cheaper as well if you don't mind that they'll take a bit longer. You can get buses. There's Flixbus, which is very affordable, which travels quite frequently. Those will take a little bit longer than the trains, but they might go more places as well, so there are some ups and downs to that. There are also, for trains, there are off-peak and on-peak fares, and they're very different. So if you travel in the mornings when it's really busy, or just after work, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m, it will be more expensive. So if you can, I would avoid travelling in those hours. It'll be much more affordable.
Okay.
And a good way that I find to save money if I want to have something to eat when I'm out is to get a meal deal from a supermarket. You can get them in most supermarkets, and it's usually a sandwich or a wrap, a drink and a snack, and it's a bundle that you get, and it's very affordable, and most places will offer those. And those are a good way to have like a good lunch on the go or breakfast, and they're much more affordable than buying them all separately. So I would recommend looking into those if you're out and about.
That's great. I mean, as a whole, would you say that Scotland is an affordable place to travel, or more on the expensive side, or does it really just depend what activities you're doing?
Scotland can be more expensive than other places in Europe, particularly accommodation can be quite expensive. Food shouldn't be too bad if you pick some cheaper restaurants. They can still be really good restaurants, but you can find more places which are more informal and would be more affordable. But it can be more expensive, so that's why I do recommend booking in advance, looking for best deals, and maybe planning a bit more so that you aren't left with expensive hotels last minute.
Well, that leads us right into our next question, which is, what is the best time of year to visit Scotland? If people are looking to book in advance so that they can get the best deals, what season should you plan for?
My personal favourite time to visit is in the spring. It can be cold, it can be rainy, but the days are really long. You can get 16-hour days with the sun, so that makes a big difference to your travel. You'll see a lot more, you'll be able to do a lot more. And it is more affordable as well. It's easier to find accommodation. Attractions have opened up their summer hours, so you don't miss out on seeing things because they're closed too early. The weather can be unpredictable, but it can be unpredictable year round, so that's not a reason not to plan to go in summer. You can never guarantee you're not going to get rain, so I would say spring. If you're going to the Fringe, it has to be August. Otherwise, I would go in spring. That's the best time of year.
Well, that sounds lovely. I mean, the longer days, the fewer crowds. It seems like spring is a really wonderful time to plan a visit. So when you plan your trip, do you need a rental car?
If you're staying in the cities or just travelling between cities, I would say no, because you don't need it. There's very good public transport, and it can be very difficult to find parking. It can be quite expensive. There isn't a lot available. It usually isn't worth your while if you're only in Edinburgh, you're only in Glasgow, or you're only going between the two. If you're going elsewhere, then I would say yes, you should get a car. It can be difficult to find public transport between rural areas. Just be aware that when you're travelling, the roads are often narrower than you might be used to, and darker as well. We don't have as many streetlights, so it can be a bit tricky. Just make sure you're comfortable driving and you know where you're going. And also we will often have manual cars, not automatic. It's quite uncommon to have an automatic rental car.
And Scotland drives on the left side of the road,
It
correct?
does, yeah. Left-hand side of the road. Just make sure that you know which way you're going and you're comfortable with driving with that, with all of those things in mind. But it is a good way to see a lot of the country that you might not be able to see otherwise.
Perfect. Okay, so rental car, no need in cities, but definitely helpful for exploring more of the countryside. How is safety in Scotland? Is it a safe place to travel to?
Scotland is generally a safe place to travel to. I would just take normal precautions when you're going places. The cities are generally safe. Just make sure you know where you are, you have a charged phone, and you're not wandering around in dark places. But I would say that in anywhere. One issue we don't tend to have is pickpocketing. It's uncommon. It is possible in tourist areas, but it's not something that happens very frequently. There has been a bit of a trend of scammers in some city centres, especially Edinburgh, who will attempt to get people to take bracelets or books and then charge money for them. So I would avoid anyone who's trying to give you something on the street that you don't want, and especially if they're quite insistent on it. That tends to be a scam. But generally it's quite safe. There's not many pickpocketers or general crime in the cities. One thing to be aware of is that pepper spray is illegal in Scotland completely. It's quite a serious offence. So if you're used to carrying pepper spray, you can't have it in Scotland. You can't buy it here. It's not possible.
Wow, that's a very good point that you made. I think a lot of people wouldn't know that it's illegal. What about traveling in the countryside? I mean, we've talked about safety in cities. Is there anything to be aware of in the countryside? Any dangerous animals if you're hiking or camping?
So there are very few dangerous animals in Scotland, which is lucky. There's like one breed of snake, which is quite rare. Ticks can be more of an issue if you get infections or anything through that. But generally, it's pretty safe. Just make sure you give cows, deer, wild boar their distance, especially if it's mating season, just because it can make them a bit tense. But otherwise, you're pretty safe. If you are camping, I would highly recommend bringing bug spray for midges. These are flying insects, which are quite common in summer, especially around swamps. They're not dangerous, but they bite and they're very painful, and you want to avoid that if at all possible.
Well, thank you so much for those tips for first-time visitors. I want to talk next about some Scottish culture and etiquette. So what are some etiquette tips that you would say Americans or other people visiting Scotland might not know about?
One thing I think there's some confusion about or people aren't really aware of is the tipping culture in Scotland. It can be quite different from what people are used to if they're American or for other parts of the world. It is common to give tips at restaurants, but we don't give as much as you would typically do in America. It's common to give tips of around 5 to 10% for good service. That's considered polite. That's not considered rude at all. Some people would also tip taxi drivers or hairdressers or nail artists, but only a few pounds, just maybe to round up to the nearest £10. Not typically any more than that. It's not impolite to only give a couple of pounds. We don't typically tip baristas or bartenders. Sometimes there's a screen for tipping bartenders or baristas, which you can do, but it's not rude to not tip. It's not really a cultural thing that we do here, so it's slightly different in that regard, but it is common to tip at restaurants for good service. The service is also a bit different than you might be used to. It's slower. You're not attended to as often. It's considered sort of rude if somebody intrudes on you too much, if you're encouraged to eat faster or drink faster. And with that, you won't get your bill automatically at the end of the meal. You have to ask for it from your waiter, just so you don't feel rushed out of eating. So that's a difference that you might notice in terms of service in restaurants. One thing which can cause offence in Scotland is if people are a little bit rude about traditional Scottish foods. It doesn't often look the most appetising. It can be a bit different from what people are used to, things like haggis and neeps, which are turnips. They don't look very appetising, but they are traditional food and people eat them regularly. They're actually very tasty. We have lots of traditional food like haggis, which is it's sheep's innards in a sheep's stomach, which can sound really unappealing. It's not something you would traditionally eat in other parts of the world, but it is a cultural dish here. It's very popular. It's very tasty. There's a vegetarian version if you don't want to eat sheep, and it is really good. And one thing that does cause offence is when people express disgust or are a bit rude about some traditional foods because they're unfamiliar to them. So it is more polite to be gracious about the food sometimes and not make jokes about it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, I have tried haggis. I think it's great. But I think just in general, that's such a good point to not be rude about traditional foods. I mean, like, yes, sheep's innards might not sound like something you would eat all the time, but that is a very common thing to eat in Scotland, and it's delicious, and you should be very open-minded about cultural dishes. I think that this is a great time to kind of plug your article that you wrote on Travel Lemming about tourist faux pas, so mistakes that tourists often make in Scotland. I mean, I read through this. It's a fantastic article. And as I was reading, I realized that your number one tourist faux pas was a mistake that I made at the beginning of this podcast, which is claiming Scottish heritage, or, I mean, not claiming heritage where it doesn't exist, but talking about, the clan that you're from and talking about maybe the kilts that you have. Whereas a lot of times, I mean, you write that maybe the average Scottish person doesn't kind of feel that same connection to Highland culture that a lot of Scottish descendants, maybe in like America or other countries around the world, might try to feel.
I think the Scots are very welcoming people who want to explore their family tree and their ancestry and chase back people that have come from Scotland. But it is right that we don't have a strong clan culture. The clan system has been gone for a long time, and many Scots were never part of the clan culture. That was never the majority of Scotland. So it can be a bit of a faux pas if you come to Scotland and say that you're Scottish because you were part of a clan, when many Scots these days have never been part of a clan and we have no real connection to it. That being said, tracing your family tree is very popular here. People really enjoy to look back through the history, and we welcome visitors to do so as well. We just don't like people to say they're more Scottish than we are because they were part of a clan. My family was never part of a clan, so I can't claim to be Scottish under that metric, but we do appreciate that people want to connect with our history. It's a great history to connect with, as long as you don't go a little bit overboard with it.
That is a fantastic point, and I think one that we would all do well to keep in mind. So now let's talk a little bit about different festivals and cultural customs in Scotland. So we've talked a lot about the Fringe Festival, and it's time to finally dive into it. What is the Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
So the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is the biggest performance art festival in the world. It runs for the entire month of August in Edinburgh. It is over hundreds of venues. There are thousands of performers. It is a huge event. It takes over the entire city. There's comedians, there's dancers, there's spoken word performances, there's all sorts of events that go on, and you can see them all in the programme that comes out with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in June, which showcases everything you can see. There are paid for events, there are free events. You can really find lots of things on the day. Not everything sells out. It is really worthwhile visiting as long as you're okay with the number of crowds there are going to be, because it is very, very popular.
So I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in 2018 on a weekend trip, and I was a silly 18-year-old at the time and did not plan any part of my schedule out. I just kind of showed up and then found, this is a extremely huge event that sells out quite a lot in advance. So how would you go about planning the best Edinburgh Fringe Festival trip? Like, how many months in advance should you start looking for tickets to different shows or accommodation or stuff like that?
I would look for accommodation as early as possible, even from the year before, because prices will climb and climb.
Wow.
They will sell out. It's not uncommon for students to rent out their spare room for the Fringe to make some extra money, and it can be very expensive. So accommodation as soon as possible, as soon as you know you're going to go. The Fringe Festival itself, the programme is put out in batches from March. Once a month, more batches of shows will come out until the final programme is published in June. So a lot of the shows will already be announced by June. If it's a big name, a big performance, a really famous comedian, they will sell out very fast. If it was the really famous Scottish comedian Kevin Bridges, that would sell out within a day, if not less, a couple of hours.
Wow.
So if you want to see somebody big, make sure you get tickets as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can see things on the day. You can go off your programme and see what's closest to you. You can get the Fringe app, which tells you what's nearby and what's still got tickets. So you can plan things on the day. You can explore a bit. You can see different things. It's quite a good idea to see some free shows. They can be great and they can be terrible. It's a real mixed bag. There are so many shows that go on that you never really know. But a free show is a great way to do it. You should bring some cash in case you do enjoy the performer, because that's the only way they make money is through tips at the end. But it's not, you don't have to pay.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people will spend thousands of pounds performing at the Fringe. They don't make any money from it because of the cost of accommodation and renting the venue and all the costs that go along with it. It is a way to launch your comedy career. So people will invest in it and spend a lot of money. And if it's a free show, they get no return on it. You don't have to. You'd have to pay if it's not a good show. I went to one that I didn't pay for because the comedian threw water over my head. So I didn't enjoy that. And I didn't sip. But if they are good, it's a good idea to bring some cash to give them, because that's the only way they have any money over the month.
Wow. And so do you need to buy a pass to get into the Fringe Festival, or is it because it's in so many different venues around the city of Edinburgh itself, you only buy tickets for the specific venues and shows that you want to see?
Yeah, you only buy tickets for the venues. It is held across the entire city. It's in so many venues. It's in the university. It's in grand, big halls. It's in tiny little basements. I saw one underneath the pub once, which was so crammed and so warm in it. So you buy tickets for the shows themselves, and you can buy them on the app, you can buy them online or on the door, or if it's a free show, you just turn up and see if there's any space left and try and get there a little bit early so you can get a seat at the back where you won't get water thrown on you. But you can see things throughout the day. The events they start in the morning and they can run until 2 or 3 at night. So there's always something on for the course of August. It is a huge, huge thing. There are also a few other festivals at the same time, which coincide with the Fringe, which make it even better. You can see the film festival on at the same time. There's the Edinburgh Book Festival, which runs for 2 weeks in August. And there is the Tattoo as well, which is on in August.
Wow. So it does seem like August is an incredible time to be in Edinburgh, but like you said, it's the most crowded, it's the most expensive, and definitely needs to be planned in advance.
Yeah, it can become really expensive, and you can just not find accommodation if you leave it last minute, so I would definitely plan it in advance, but it is an incredible time to be in Edinburgh.
Wow. Any other festivals that you'd recommend besides the Edinburgh Fringe Festival?
A really unique and overlooked festival is Up Heala in Shetland, which is held in January, and it is a Viking festival that they hold each year. They dress as Vikings and they walk through the streets with a fire procession and they light fire to a Viking ship, and then they have a huge party.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a really big festival. It's really striking with all the fire everywhere, the bonfires, and they do performances as well. So that's something that's really beautiful to see.
That's incredible. I mean, so January, is it quite cold there?
It is freezing in January. Shetland is very far north, so you have to wrap up warm. You have to make sure you bring your hat, scarf, gloves, your thick jacket, everything. It is very cold, but at least the fire warms you up.
Now that we've talked about the major festivals in Scotland, what about any kinds of holidays or different cultural days throughout the year that someone visiting might want to take advantage of?
So one of the most important holidays in Scotland is Hogmanay, which is New Year's Eve, but it is very traditional to Scotland. It was traditionally the major holiday. We didn't celebrate Christmas until the 50s. So Hogmanay is a huge deal in Scotland. We have specific traditions that we have. It's very common to eat steak pie on the 1st of January as a way to recover from the night before. We actually have 2 full days off after Hogmanay, whereas in England they only have 1 because it's such a big holiday in Scotland. We have 2 bank holidays. We sing Auld Lang Syne, which is very common around the world, but it was written by our national poet, Robbie Burns. So we dance to that and we sing to Auld Lang Syne. And there's also a tradition called first footing, where the first person who crosses your door after the midnight bells should be tall, dark and handsome and bring coal, and that will bring you luck through the year. And we try to make sure the first person is always tall, dark and handsome. We also have a holiday in November, Bonfire Night or Guy Fawkes Night. It's the 5th of November. It's to commemorate the foiling of the gunpowder plot by Guy Fawkes against the Houses of Parliament in London back in the 17th century. And it's quite a fun night. People set off fireworks, there's bonfires, lots of kids will run around with sparklers and we'll have little fireworks that get set off. You might see some caricatures which get burned, or there's bonfires and kids running around with sparklers, setting off little fireworks. We have a big fireworks event rather than people individually setting off their fireworks for safety reasons and because the law has changed slightly. But you can go and see some fireworks shows which are really good fun every year on the 5th of November. We also have Burns Suppers in January, on the 25th of January. This is to commemorate Robbie Burns, who wrote Auld Lang Syne and lots of other poetry. He is Scotland's national poet, and it's traditional that people will eat haggis because Robbie Burns wrote a poem about haggis called Ode to Haggis, and you recite Robbie Burns' poetry. Somebody will address the haggis, and quite often there's a Ceilidh dance afterwards, which, like I say, is a traditional Scottish dance with Highlands music. People will dress sometimes in kilts and there'll be bagpipes, and it's a way to kind of mark Scottish culture. Burns Night.
Wow. Okay, so New Year's Eve, Bonfire Night on the 5th of November, and the Burns Supper on the 25th of January. Now, if you're looking to celebrate some of these holidays, do you need to know someone Scottish and be invited to their family party, or is there places that you can go in the city centres to kind of celebrate these holidays?
Bonfire Night will have a lot of organised events run by some city councils and smaller towns, so you can see where those are in advance and you can go and gather in like fields or in parks where those fireworks are getting set off to enjoy them. Burns Suppers can be held in people's homes. It's common for people to have people over as guests. Or there are more formal events for burn suppers. Somewhere like Sloane's Pub in Glasgow, they have a ceilidh every Friday, and they'll have a burn supper and they'll have a ceilidh dance afterwards. So you can see where some of these events are taking place and go and have a supper and then go for the dance afterwards, and it's really good fun.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Okay, well, the final section before we wrap up, any tips that you have for visitors or any kind of common mistakes that you notice tourists make when they visit Scotland?
So I've seen sometimes people will worry too much about the weather. Obviously, people are told that Scotland is very rainy and it can be very cold, and that's true. But it isn't rainy and cold all year round. You can get some nice weather in the summer, and I have heard of people who buy hats and gloves to come and visit in June and July, and which they don't need. It's not cold enough to need hats and gloves.
Yeah.
You'll just end up taking them off and being too warm. So make sure you pay attention to what the weather forecast is going to be. You might need suntan lotion and shorts, you might need a hat and gloves, but it's not the same weather year round. So don't worry too much about bringing your big hiking boots in July. I mean, you might not need them. Another common concern I've seen people have is to do with the difference between Scottish and English pounds and whether you need to convert Scottish pounds. They are the same thing. They are the same currency. They're just printed from different places. So Scottish pound notes are printed in Scotland by the Royal Bank of Scotland. So they look different. There's different pictures on them, but they're the same currency. So you can use English banknotes in Scotland, and you should be able to use Scottish banknotes in England. They're not always accepted. Sometimes you'll have shopkeepers who don't like them because they're not used to them, but they are the same money. So you don't need to convert them. You don't need to change them before you go to England. They should work the same way everywhere.
That's so interesting. Do you know why the pounds look different or the banknotes look different even though they're the same currency?
We have different national banks. There's the Bank of England and there's the Royal Bank of Scotland. We have banks traditionally from before the countries united. So they have always remained separate, but they make the same currency, and it's just more of an artistic thing to have banknotes which have Scottish people on them, Scottish historical figures and legends and landscapes. It's just more of an artistic thing than it is a currency thing. So they're nice to look at, but they don't make any difference in terms of what the money is.
Okay, great. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of our episode. But to conclude, Louise, in a few sentences, why should someone plan a trip to go visit Scotland?
There's so much to offer visitors to Scotland. There's a thriving cultural scene, particularly in Edinburgh, Dundee and Glasgow. There's so much going on. There's unparalleled nature. The Highlands are absolutely stunning. So are the islands. There are areas of the borders which are beautiful. If you're an outdoorsy person, you won't run out of things to do. You'll find lots to explore. And overall, it's a really friendly country. People love having visitors. They talk to people on the street. It's very welcoming. So tourists will enjoy being part of this culture when they visit.
That's incredible. I mean, I love visiting Scotland. It is one of my favorite countries to go back to. And I hope that with your advice, I'll plan a trip soon. I mean, this was incredible advice. So thank you so much for lending your local expertise to us and giving us your time.
Thank you for having me. Be lovely.
Yeah, and for anyone out there listening who is inspired to plan a trip to Scotland now, definitely check out Louise's articles on Travel Lemming. She has tons of articles about where to stay in Edinburgh and Glasgow, best day trips from Edinburgh, the best road tripping itinerary around Scotland. So those are some really wonderful articles written by our local Scotland expert, Louise. If you are planning a larger trip around the United Kingdom or Ireland, definitely check out some of our other podcast episodes. We interviewed Abigail, one of our writers, about road tripping around Ireland. And so that's a podcast that we have. We also interviewed our local London expert, Brooke, about the best ways to plan a trip to London. So if you are looking to extend your trip around Scotland and venture off into Ireland or England, definitely check those podcast episodes. Well, Louise, thank you again so much for joining us today. That's all for now. I'm your host, Laura McFarland. We will see you next time on the Travel Lemming podcast.